welcome to video 3 of There's a Snake in My School. And I'm just going to go through these worksheets so you can have an idea what to do. As usual, we have our first page here with our word of the week, which was mischievous. So please choose a synonym and an antonym. We had a chat about those in video 2. And then try and use the word mischievous in a sentence. Now, one of the things that you may have noticed in this story is that we had a little bit of alliteration. And this is when we have the same sound repeated several times during a sentence, or it could even just be in a phrase. So one example of an alliteration would be Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So the sound P is repeated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times there. And when you have an alliteration like that, where the beginning of the sound is repeated, you can actually, it turns into a bit of a tongue twister. So it becomes a little bit tricky to say, especially if you're trying to say it fast. So Peter Piper picked a peck of, it can sometimes be quite difficult to say because you're repeating that same sound again and again. Now, we have done alliteration before in class. So what we've said before is alliteration, it's the beginning of the word. That is the celebration. So when we have a rhyme, it's the end of the word that's the celebration. That's the fun part, is the end of the word. But alliteration, it's when the beginning of the word is repeated. Okay, so what about alliteration then? Can you have it when any of the letters are the same? Well, no, actually, it has to be the letter sound that's the same. So if we say like Kim called, that's an alliteration. We've actually got a K there and a C. So you would think, well, that doesn't look like the same. But because the K and the C in this case have the same sound, then that actually classes as an alliteration. Also, Philip fell. Well, that's a P there and an F there. But the PH, as we all know, is an F sound. So when you look at that, it doesn't look the same. But when you say it, Philip fell, it does sound the same. And actually, you can have situations where you've got the same letter. I've put this on the sheet that I've, just to make it clearer, I put this on your sheet that's uploaded onto the Google Classroom. But say, for example, you have the name Theo. I shall write that down here. We used to have a Theo in our school. And say if you said Theo talked. Now, that looks like it might be an alliteration because you've got the letter T twice. But that T combines with the H to make a th sound. And that's like a hard T sound. So that actually isn't an alliteration. Or you could have, say, Phoebe. That's a girl's name. And it's like the Philip. It's using the PH with a F. Maybe you could say she partied. So you might say, oh, look, 2 P's there. Phoebe partied. But again, that's not an alliteration because those are not the same sound. That P is actually used as a F sound. So it's the letter sound that we're after, not exactly what the letter is. Now, alliteration is really useful and you'll notice it around a lot of companies use alliteration because it's fun and it helps you to remember things. So these are just a couple of company names that you may recognise. Burt's Bees, they make a lip balm and they make some mosquito repellent. So that's easy to remember, isn't it? Because it's 2 B's together. Krispy Kreme, that's not really spelt correctly. That's how they spell it for fun, for their brand. But again, Krispy Kreme, that's an alliteration. So we kind of remember that. Dunkin' Donuts, that's another alliterative name. And Coca-Cola. So they make quite fun names which help you to remember. Also, there's lots of children's characters and fun characters with alliterative names. Things like Bob the Builder, Bugs Bunny, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse. They all just sound fun and slightly humorous because they have the same letter at the start of the name. It doesn't always make something sound fun, but in these cases, it helps you remember and it just sounds a bit more fun. And then newspapers often use alliteration as well because it really catches your eye. So if you were walking past a newspaper shop and you saw a headline that said pasties, petrol and the politics of panic, which I think might have been something related to the coronavirus recently, there's lots of P's there and it might make you stop and look. It kind of grabs your attention. Or there's one here that says history in his hands. So history, his hands. So again, an alliterative headline that makes you kind of stop and take notice. So what we're going to have a look at is some sentences that are related to the story. They're not actually all in the story, but they're related to the story. And I'd like you to look at them and circle the sentences that you think have an alliterative quality about them. So I'll read them to you. I'm not going to tell you which ones they are, that's for you to do, but just listen while I say them, and it might be apparent as you're listening. Number 1 is the enormous slithery snake slipped silently down the slide. The goldfish tried to hide behind some water. I love that phrase. Meet Penelope, my pet python. There was a big bulge in her belly, the shape of Miss Bloat. She dragged poor Penelope the python down the hall and plonked her in the bin. Miss Bloat, the headmistress, thundered into the playground. So circle the ones that you think that have some alliteration in there. And then let's see if you can write your own alliterative sentence. Okay. And then just a fun, easy activity, which requires you to do a little bit of thinking, a little bit of reading. Can you read these words here and think how you could join them up to pictures on there to make an alliteration? I shall give you an example. Pretty. Is there anything here that begins with a P? Oh, pretty pig. That would be an alliteration, so you could join a line from pretty to pig. So see if you can figure that one out. Have I got that right? Yes. I've just suddenly thought, is that a princess? But no, I think that's actually a queen. Sorry, got confused for a second there. Okay, now last week we also had a look, when we were doing the platypus story, we looked at some synonyms for the word said. So that's other words that you can use instead of the word said that will make your writing more interesting. Now, David Williams is brilliant at this. He has used so many different words instead of the word said throughout this story. One of them here is announced. Now, that's a good word to use instead of said. That's like when you're telling everybody in class something, for example. Say if you came in and it was your birthday, you might say, I walked into class and I announced to the room that it was my birthday, or it's my birthday today, I announce. That's when you tell a group of people something. You're telling, it might actually doesn't have to be a group of people, but you're giving them something newsworthy or something important. So you might announce that you're moving to a new country. So it's not something like, I wouldn't announce that I'm hungry, but that doesn't seem, it's sort of important enough, but you could announce if you were moving. So it's something where you're making a big statement and telling everybody something important. So have a look at our word bank here. We have got the words, we had some of these last week: screamed, shouted, spluttered, snapped, bellowed, and encouraged. See if you can fit those in to these sentences. So come and give her a tickle, something, Miranda. So a word instead of said there. Use one of the words from the word bank. Now, I have another quiz this week, and we had the one about pythons last week. So I thought, why not? We had the duck-billed platypus last week. So I thought, why not let's do something about pythons this week, because they're a little bit similar to the duck-billed platypus in some respects. So I've given you some ideas for some research here. There's some videos and some just cool facts if you want to just read some articles. And then let's see if you can answer these questions. What type of animal is a python? Is it a reptile, a mammal, or an amphibian? How do pythons kill their prey? What do pythons eat? Where in the world would you find pythons? What habitats do they like to live in? I'll give you a clue. There's an S there. There might be more than one. How do they avoid predators? Are they nocturnal, which means they come out, they're active at night, or are they diurnal, which is active during the daytime? And do they lay eggs? So see if you can find out the answers to those questions. And then I'd like you also to do a little bit of creative writing. I think when we've read a David Williams story, it really makes us want to write something crazy of our own because he has such fun ideas. So I'd like you to imagine that you could bring an animal into school. What animal would you choose and what might happen? I think you should try and choose something really unusual. Maybe a duck-billed platypus, or maybe you could pick some other kind of crazy animal like a crocodile or a hyena, something a bit unusual, something that you wouldn't typically have at home as a pet. And when you're doing your writing, see if you can use some synonyms. So maybe your hyena, for example, could be Henry hyena. Or maybe if you brought in a duck-billed platypus, it could be Dolly the duck-billed platypus, which in fact is like the story we had last week. And also when you're writing, let's see if you can get some synonyms in for the word said. So don't just say, why have you brought in Henry the hyena said Miss Paula. You could say, why have you brought in Henry the hyena? Gasped Miss Paula. So see if you can add a little bit of colour to your writing with some synonyms for the word said. And then, oh yes, I think and discuss. So if you've got time, just have a think about this. It says in the story, Miranda loved to be different. Maybe you could have a chat with your parents. You don't have to really do this and write any notes. It'd be good if you could. But maybe just have a chat to your parents. Is it good to be different? Why? What would you say the answer to that is and why? And then also, imagine Miss Bloat escapes from being eaten by Penelope. What do you think she would say or do? And do you think was she right to lock up those animals? I mean, some of them were dangerous. Maybe you could have a little think about that as well. And then we have a few activities. This one is actually a cutting activity where you will make, if you cut around this, you will make your own snake, which you can colour in. Well, you're probably best to colour it in before you cut it out. We have a word search and some handwriting practice as well. So I thought there was some other fun activity there. I think I've missed one. I'm sure I had another colouring thing. Oh, let me see. If I can find it, I shall put it on your the work that I put on the Google Classroom. I don't know what I've done with that. But yeah, just talking about alliteration very quickly. Do you remember last week when we did the duck-billed platypus? Just one thing I wanted to have a quick look at. This was all rhyming words, but actually it's even a bit more clever than that. And I didn't, to be honest, I didn't realise this until after I'd done the story. And then I was thinking about the alliteration in the David Walliams book. But, you know, we were trying to get the words, he was trying to get the first names of the animals to sit, you know, to rhyme, to sit on something. So duck-billed platypus was called Dolly. So duck-billed platypus, Dolly. So it'd be Dolly, duck-billed, or Dolly, the duck-billed platypus. And Kate, the kookaburra. And Stella the starfish, Lemony the lobster, Jean the jaguar, Herbert the hippopotamus, Hannah the hedgehog, Jean the jaguar, oh no, I did that one, sorry. Where are we up to? Ivana the ibex, Terry the tortoise, Claire the camel, Ellen, I'm assuming, is an echidna. That's a bit like a duck-billed platypus. The Clive the caterpillar, Bob the budgerigar, Renata the rhinoceros. I'm not sure what that animal is. It begins with an S. Oh, a squirrel. Sophie the squirrel, and Zane the zebra. So that carries on. So actually, this book did include, very subtly, some alliteration as well. Okay, tune back in for video 4, and I will explain the sort of answers that I was looking for from your worksheet. Okay, thank you. Bye.